Is there some? Yes, thank you, thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, and Matt.
I saw you applaud, Llyod. You're in big trouble.
Can you switch his microphone off? Ask 10 people in a room what's the best way to educate people, and you'll get 10 answers. Ask 10 politicians, and you'll get 20. I spent a lot of time wondering why there is so little agreement about how to facilitate the acquisition of knowledge until I began to think of knowledge as just another characteristic of human organisms and came to this realization. The evolution of the human mind resulting in the dominance of Homo sapiens went further than our wildest suppositions. We do not learn anything. The mind is not an empty vessel which we nurture and develop into a mighty repository of knowledge. In fact, learning is impossible. The truth is the opposite. We are born with complete knowledge of the universe, knowledge which unfortunately we proceed to lose, beginning at the moment of birth and continuing for the rest of our lives. Now, on reflection, this isn't that surprising. Many species are born with innate knowledge. Many quadrupeds can walk within minutes of their deliveries. Fish are effectively born swimming. Conventional wisdom has it that we're born in an only partially developed state because of the difficulty of getting a large head through a small birth canal. But experience shows us that head size is no indication of intelligence. Just as a side note, I think there may be a hypothesis that could be put forward about the evolution of BAHFest talks in that they will all be about Donald Trump within a few years. However, there are parallels with other characteristics. We are born with all the teeth we will ever have. The adult set simply isn't visible when we are born. The human female is born with all the eggs it will ever produce, to be discarded one by one throughout its life. And we are born covered in hair. Some of us, yeah. It only changes in color, texture, and visibility until the day we, very sadly, start to lose it. There are historical references which suggest that other cultures were well aware of this characteristic of humanity. In Greek mythology, Athena, goddess of wisdom, isn't born but instead leaps fully grown from Zeus's forehead. But perhaps the best parallel is human language. It has been shown that the newborn infant recognizes all phonemes used in every human language, but within months, its mind discards those not required for its parent's language. Similarly, the newborn infant possesses all knowledge which begins immediately to be discarded. So, if children really possess all human knowledge, why do we not have mathematical theorems, philosophical treatises, or engineering marvels produced by the young? Well, the answer is that while the knowledge is there, the cognitive abilities and motor skills are not. The human still has to develop not only speech, but the ability to manipulate and apply the storehouse of knowledge within its head. Unfortunately, as these skills increase, the knowledge itself decreases at an alarming rate. Still, some knowledge gets through. There are obvious similarities between children's art and bubble chamber photos of subatomic particle interaction. All around the world, in all human languages, the first word of an infant is ma. Now, this has resulted in its being assigned the meaning of mother, but we can now recognize it for what it really is, an attempt to formulate Newton's law. And such astonishing revelations are not limited to physics. The obvious delight that small children take in the song Old MacDonald, with its repeated E-I-E-I-O, is clearly due to its being a near perfect statement of Euler's identity. Now, by plotting both the decrease in knowledge against time and the increase in cognitive abilities, and then combining them in an arbitrary manner, we can see an intelligence peak where the human organism knows as much about everything as it ever will. This generally occurs, not surprisingly, in the late teenage years, and explains the common feeling experienced at that age that one knows everything. Because as we can see now, as closely as possible, one does. This also explains why the greatest human achievements occur in the early 20s. Witness, for example, Einstein's Annus Mirabilis of 1905, when he was 26. Galois' contributions to algebra made before his death at the age of 20. And Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball, also released at the age of 20. What this means for the field of education is nothing short of dramatic. We can see now that education does not facilitate our gaining knowledge, but rather the exact opposite. What used to be thought of as the fount of the fount of knowledge, is actually what I would like to think of as the toilet of ignorance. Through the reinforcement of certain types of knowledge, we stimulate the mind to discard other types. In other words, education is actually a means of selectively generating ignorance in different areas of human knowledge. This explains the well-known phenomenon experienced in classrooms around the world, often described as losing the will to live. In fact, what we are feeling in ourselves is ourselves getting more and more ignorant, our knowledge leaving us at an accelerated rate in these hothouses of information loss. It also explains such things as the attempt by some to prolong their adolescence, the existence of ponytails in older men, the general drop in quality of movie sequels, and why people yearn for the good old days, because they were actually smarter then. It also explains the physiological changes that occur when one attempts to reverse knowledge loss. The Buddha, having regained all the knowledge that he once possessed, resembles nothing so much as a very large, happy baby. In light of this discovery, we are organizing a series of projects intended to increase our knowledge in the most direct way by getting hold of it before it is lost. By repurposing research labs as daycare centers, we hope to encourage young geniuses to pass on their knowledge to us before they too lose it. We are planning a baby prom next year at the Albert Hall, where a handful of toddlers and an array of priceless musical instruments will open our ears to new musical worlds. And finally, an all-child mission to the International Space Station is envisaged as soon as it can be child-proofed. Thank you and good evening.